And so to me, so much of it comes back to how we deal. Really, they're two four-letter words. They're fascinating, and these are both family friendly, right? The first one I mentioned, it's risk,
Yeah.
how we manage risk, and the second is fear, how we manage fear.
If there's anything that I think about when I think about you, nobody can talk Mike Rowe into doing something that isn't in your lane. We understand who you are and what you want to do, and you want to show people on somebody's got to do it that exact thing. Somebody's got to do this, so they're out there doing what they have to do. Well, I doubt any of those people are doing anything different because of COVID. If you weren't doing what you really feel like was an important life mission, a purpose, maybe it this season can redirect. Maybe there's going to be passion that comes out of this beyond, and it'll be good.
Maybe. Look, I think it reminds me of something my dad said once about money. With regard to the old adage, money changes everything. Money changes people. He said that money actually makes you more of who you are.
Mm.
And if you start out a schmuck, money
It's schmuckier.
is going to make you schmuckier, right? Um, Now, I'm not sure that could be as big a bromide as the original. I don't know. But I think there is a corollary. And I think moments like this tend to make people more of who they are.
Yeah.
There's a clarifying component. And again, I do believe it feels like we are in the middle of the storm right now because we are. But when we look back, I don't know when, but I think often about, the stories in London, in the Second World War during the Blitzkrieg, and the bombs are falling, right? And the people, right? They go underground. Why wouldn't you? And they stay there for a couple of weeks, and the bombs keep falling, you know. But they've been down there a couple of weeks now, and so they venture out and they start opening the shops. The bombs are still falling. And then they open up the schools, and the sirens go off and they run underground. The bombs are still falling. They got bored with being terrified,
Yeah.
and they just decided, this this is not who we are. We're not people who live underground. We're going to have to adapt. We're going to have to adopt. We're going to have to assume a new relationship with risk. We're going to have to live our lives. And so, on a micro level, we all get to do that. We all have to. On a macro level, our country is going to have to do that. The world's going to have to do that. And, I don't know if I've said this to you before, but early on and still to this day, the one thing that hasn't changed for me is that it feels like the country is going through the Kubler-Ross 5 stages of grief at different times.
You're
Oh
right.
my goodness.
Right? So
Wow.
so I don't care where you are in this world. You could be in a mall, out shopping for a car, taking your kids to, whatever you're doing. You look around and you'll see it. This one's in denial. Ah, this one's still bargaining. Over here, oh, this one's in depression, right? This one is just angry. And here we have somebody who's accepted it. What exactly have they accepted? I don't know. The reality of the virus, the reality of a new normal, the reality of losing their job and having to retool, reconnect. So all of these things, it's like a big algebra problem
That's
with
so
no
good.
constants, right?
Yeah.
It's all variables. And so when you look around and, our brains will always find what we tell them to look for.
Yeah.
So if you look for depression, you'll find it. If you look for acceptance, you'll find it. Bargaining, all of it. And so we all are going through this at different stages, and it's hard to know. There's no playbook, and there's no magic formula. And what it really forces us to do is sit down face to face with people and listen and talk and see where they are, see if you can help, and who knows, maybe see where you are. Maybe they can help you.
The saying, you don't become what you want to be, you become who you are. I don't know. There's so many people who have put so many other people in boxes during this time. It has just been so bad. It's like the race box, the political box, and it's like there's about 4 or 5 boxes in the world, and we all have been crammed into one of those boxes. And how do you see even that?
Well, I see that it's like let's make a deal. You get the box,
Number
you got
one.
the curtain, right? You got this. It's like so the good news is we're getting we're getting choices.
Right.
The bad news is Monty Hall is still out there, and you're going to pull the curtain aside, and there's going to be, a mule with some borax strapped to it or something. But no, I would rather have multiple choices that you described
Yeah.
than this binary prison of two ideas that we've been put into, where there's left and there's right,
There you
and
go.
there's black and there's white,
Yeah.
and there's right. Everything is this or that. And, the 5 stages of grief isn't this or that. It's 5 stages.
Right.
And that's what makes it, I think, a little more germane to actual living. Because in life, I mean, we just had a terrific meal here. And there were many choices. There was meat done to different temperatures, and there was a terrific salad. There was this, right? Like, life is choices. But for some reason, when it comes to the way we talk to each other now and the kind of news we watch, everything is framed as, well, are you pro-mask or anti-mask?
Yeah.
Well, careful how you answer, because you're not really talking about masks now. You're talking about all sorts of other things that have been assigned to that. And so on top of everything else, we're all trying to figure out how it is we're being perceived if we do or don't do a particular thing that's going to send a message that we don't intend to send. And so to me, so much of it comes back to how we deal. Really, they're 2 4-letter words. They're fascinating, and these are both family friendly, right? The first one I mentioned, it's risk.
Yeah.
How we manage risk, and the second is fear. How we manage fear. Now, I know you've got a lot to say about that, and I know that the Bible has a great deal to say about that, and I know about the foundation upon which you build your house, right? But I think, I'm working on this story now for the podcast that I think you'll like, but it has to do with it has to do with proportionality and fear. And I look back at something that happened in London a century ago called a moral panic. And a moral panic is the thing that happens when an entire population completely loses its collective mind over something that is dangerous, but not proportionally dangerous to what's happening. Now, I'm not saying that's what's happening here. I'm not going to minimize the virus. But back in 1888, a fiend named Jack the Ripper took 5 lives. And those 5 lives were all prostitutes, and they all worked in a very specific part of town. And everybody knew that. But because of the way the newspapers reported on what happened, and because of the way the politicians in charge handled what happened, and because of the way the doctors couldn't get on the same page and explain what happened, the entire town of London locked itself down for nearly 6 months because they were going through the 5 stages of grief without context or perspective. And so, that's a very long way of saying we're in the middle of it right now. But when we look back on this one day, and when future generations look back, we'll be weighed and measured on 2 things: how we handled the risk and how we dealt with the fear. And that's the way it always is.